Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Paige Berger, and I'm the marketing director here at Barrett Bookstore. I'm broadcasting to you live from Darien, Connecticut with my behind-the-scenes event coordinator extraordinaire, Rosanna Neeson, and our distinguished guests, Susan Conley and Lily King, whom I will introduce properly in a moment. We're also thrilled to be here with our friends from the Darien Library. While we've really missed being together in person, it's been great fun partnering on a wide array of programming throughout the past several months. In addition to tonight, we have a super fun slate of events coming up in March, including another fantastic Maine author, Kate Russo, a book launch party with Darien's own Carola Lovering, an evening with the dynamic duo behind the Gray restaurant, Mashama Bailey and Jono Morisano, a conversation with Jeff Immel. I could go on, so check out the events page. We'll pop a link in the chat here and have a look when you have a chance. We have such a lovely crowd gathered here this evening from Darien, the surrounding communities, and across the country. For those of you who are joining Barrett Bookstore for the first time, we are a little indie bookstore in our 81st year of business, and we're very grateful for the community support to ensure that we stick around for many years to come. We're thrilled to bring you this event tonight free of charge, but we would be remiss if we didn't note that you can help us and also support the wonderful authors who give so generously of their time by buying their books. And we have put a link at the bottom right below where my face is. You can go ahead and click on it. It will take you right to our bookstore and you can purchase online. We do ship across the country. We deliver locally. We have backdoor pickup and we are open for business. So we look forward to seeing you there. And finally, a few housekeeping notes. If you haven't joined us on Crowdcast before, it's a webinar platform. We can't see you, so you can put your feet up and relax. On the side of the screen here, we have a chat feature where it says, say something nice, and you're welcome to do just that. On the bottom of your screen, there's a chat feature that says, ask a question. And that's the place you want to put any questions you'd like to ask our guests tonight. We'll read off as many as we have time for later in the program. So if a question comes to your mind, you can put it in there at any time, and we'll have a look at those in a little bit. And if you want to share this program with your friends, it will be recorded. You can come back to this link at any time. So if you hear something that you want to hear again, or you want to share it with anyone you know, feel free to revisit at any time. And now for an introduction of our two distinguished authors, both of whom have spent time with us in person in Darien for previous book launches and whom we very much hope to see again in person in the future. We're here tonight to celebrate the release of Susan Conley's newest novel, Landslide, which has been praised by everyone from Rick Bass to Judy Blume to Sarah Blake. It's devastatingly gorgeous and a surefire staff pick here at Barrett. Susan is the author of 5 critically acclaimed books, including this new novel. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times Magazine, the Paris Review, the Virginia Quarterly Review, the Harvard Review, and others. She's been awarded multiple fellowships from the MacDowell Colony, as well as fellowships from the Bread Loaf Writers Conference, the Maine Arts Commission, and the Massachusetts Arts Council. She's won the Maine Book Award and the Maine Award for Publishing Excellence, and has been a featured TEDx speaker, where her talk, The Power of Story, has been viewed widely. She's taught at numerous colleges and international arts residencies, and is currently on the faculty of the Stone Coast MFA program, and is a co-founder of The Telling Room, a creative writing lab for kids in Portland. Susan's conversation partner tonight is none other than Lily King, the award-winning author of 5 novels. Her most recent, Writers and Lovers, was just released in paperback. If you have not read it, you must. So pick it up at the link below. Another big-time staff pick here at Barrett. Her 2014 novel, Euphoria, won the Kirkus Award, the New England Book Award, and was a finalist for the National Book Critics Award. Other stories, essays, and reviews have since appeared in a variety of publications, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, Vogue, Los Angeles Review of Books, One Story, and the Harvard Review. Susan, Lily, welcome. I'm going to bring both of you up in a moment. We're going to get rid of the mute button, and we want to actually bring all of us up front. I'm going to unmute the two of you, and I'm going to get out of here. Thank you very much.
Thank you
so much.
Hi, Suze.
Hi, Lily.
How are you?
It's great to see you in Connecticut. Great.
Susan and I just had a walk about an hour ago in person, masked. So it's very funny to be here on the screen with you.
No.
So we're just going to dig in, talking about Landslide. Oh my God, which is, I don't have my coffee. It's across the room. Can't get up. But as you know, I loved this book so very much. And it is just beautiful in 100 ways, and just a fantastic, fantastic story about a family. But you know how I always like to start with, I always want to know, where did you get that very, very, very first idea? Like, when did it come to you? And then what happened? What did you do with that idea? And how does one idea on one day, become a novel?
Yes. A very good multi-layered question. Let's see.
Yes.
I feel like we have some dear friends here, and I'm so grateful that you're here. And I'm sorry if I repeat myself, because I know I probably have said this part before, but I think the first idea for this book, the very first real tangible idea, came while I was driving my car to Wiscasset from Portland. I grew up in Maine. I've done that drive many, many, many times. And I had the radio on really loud. I was alone, and it was Fleetwood Mac. And I started singing at the top of my lungs. And I have a joke to myself, which is that you can't go a day without hearing Fleetwood Mac in Maine. So I love it. It always comes true. I always hear Fleetwood Mac on the radio in Maine. And then I started laughing to think of my teenage boys in the car grimacing while I sang at the top of my lungs. And I pulled over and I wrote the dialogue. I think I wrote the opening dialogue of the book. I wrote that quick banter between Sam and his mother. And then I knew I had something.
And it was about Landslide, the song Landslide, that you were just hearing on the radio.
Yeah. And the line that opened the novel up for me emotionally was, I don't want to grow up on Stevie Nicks in Maine like you did, Mom. That's when I was like, oh, there's something here. There's some tension here.
Right. And do you think that's something that you've actually heard from your own kids, or did this other teenage boy just kind of drop in?
Yeah, no.
Like
that was an alien creature that came into my car. He was like an amalgamation of all kinds of boys. And I knew that he spoke boy. I know how to speak boy. So I could hear him. Yeah. And I let him talk. Sam pretty much dictated the terms of the novel in a way, if I think about it. The 16-year-old son. He
was the first son to arrive.
I think he was, yeah. And then Charlie right on his heels, because Charlie's 17. And I think the line, he's our moral police, that came really early. We needed like the grounding of Charlie. And then we had Sam, like very volatile, challenging everyone in the family. And I have seen this with siblings. I've seen these roles, right?
Yeah. And they work so well as sort of foils for each other in this novel, but not in a like, he's this, so he's that, I don't feel you making them, incredibly dichotomous, they feel like siblings, like I don't know if you feel this about your boys, but I feel this about my girls, that they are so different from each other when they're in the house with us. And yet you put them out in the world with all the sea of other, kind of teenagers, or in my case now, early 20s. So in the range of how kids can be, my kids are very similar, but in contrast to just one another in the house, they're so different. And so I wondered if it seems like that with these boys, because they are in some ways, you feel their fraternity,
Yeah, we won't play on the word too much, but they're wolf-like, cub-like fraternity. They are very close and they're very different. And I'm thinking of your girls now, who I'm very devoted to and have watched grow up. And it's true, they're so different. But it's, if you see them in the world, they're the sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And I love exploring that sibling devotion, and also like that quick fire, like they can spark really fast at each other.
Yeah. Except when one is in peril, you know how fiercely loyal they are to each other. Yeah, you do that really, really well, really well. So I'm wondering, okay, so you got this idea, and I'm wondering if you knew immediately kind of what it was about. Not, so Susan and I teach this workshop in Italy in non-COVID times, and Suze talks a lot about situation versus story. And so when I ask what it's about, I'm talking about the story and not just the situation, that they're in Maine and blah, blah, blah. But, did you know what it was really about? And did that change? And were there any surprises, kind of thematically about this novel?
That is a good question. That is like one to ponder. So, and I'm going to ask it right back at you too.
Oh God,
lovers. So just get ready.
Oh.
So I'm going to use the phrase emotional curiosity. It drives me. I was very curious about the emotional connection between the boys and the mother. Could the mother stay connected to them, to these boys that were starting to leave her? There's a lot of like leave taking. The boys need to separate. They need to individuate. The husband is left. Kid is gone. He's very injured. So it was emotional curiosity, but I didn't know what shape it would take. And so here's what had to happen for all the writers out there. It had to have like vessels. It had to have these plot frames, right? And it turned out that Sam, my younger boy in the novel, he'd suffered a great trauma. I had no idea about that for the first, I would say even the first draft, Lily. I don't think I knew he was in trauma then.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
I happen to have read the first draft.
And you know what? He was smoking pot and he was getting into some trouble, but the stakes weren't high enough for the kind of emotional kind of treachery that I wanted to explore. I needed stakes quite high.
Yeah. And he needed to be in pain, and he sure was. Yeah. That's very interesting.
Yeah. And he was suffering, and then once he was suffering, and I really use that word intentionally, like the emotional stakes got high because he was suffering. Many boys suffer. And then I landed on that line. He had to go see this social worker at school, and she has this great line I love. And I can say this with great humility because it's not my line, it's hers. She says, many boys had complicated ideas of what masculinity meant, and they suffered when they didn't need to suffer. And I landed on that line, and I was like, oh, here we go. Now I'm starting to learn what this novel's about. We're going to explore masculinity. We're going to explore what it means to be a teenage boy quietly suffering in private.
Right.
And can the mom reach the boys? And then these things started to be what you're talking about, like underneath, right?
Yeah. And did that line come to you? Was it inspired by any kind of research that you did about kind of masculinity and what gets buried and that sort of thing? Or
it's like the water I swim in.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in questions of masculinity as a feminist mom. It's truly where I live, because how can I keep my boys open? Or now they're 20 and 18. Now my job is just to keep trying to keep their hearts open, right? And to not let them be fooled by these tropes of like hyper masculine men. And also I wanted to interrogate like this whole reductive notion of toxic masculinity, because as a mother of boys, it can easily be pinned on the boys. Like it's as if this like rape culture started with 13-year-olds, you know, when the 13-year-olds I know, and I know a lot of them, they're just trying to get, you know, by. And
yeah, that's really interesting. And it's interesting. I'm thinking about Kit and how Kit is not, you know, he's in Canada in a hospital for most of the novel. And there's, you know, we do see them with the boys on visits, but, you know, he's quite absent. And I wonder, he's not absent from the novel because he's such a great character, and we're always thinking about him and hoping to see him again. But I have a bit of a crush on Kit. But I'm wondering, did you always know that he would be so removed from the book, from the boys, I want to say, and when, how that evolved, and why? Like, do you feel because he's gone, she can get to a different place with those boys at this moment? You know, was that useful?
It was enormously useful to have him gone, and he was gone from the start. He was always going to be gone. That I did know. So that she would have to live on this little island, tiny little island in Maine. And she's very competent. She's very tough, Jill is. But the boys had these deep attachments to their father as well. And suddenly she had to be all things. And I knew that would raise the stakes and put even more pressure on Jill. And I was curious how she would respond to that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
We didn't really talk about this, but do you want to just read, like, you know, a couple of pages just to give us a feel for the prose?
Sure. Okay, I'll just do, because we're talking about the boys, I'll move into I'll just read from the start. Because then I set the scene. So I'll just read a page and a half, maybe. It's late afternoon at the end of a long October when the Fleetwood Mac song comes on. We're halfway down the peninsula, and I tell the wolves I was raised on Stevie Nicks, so could they please let me listen to the whole thing? Because Sam, the younger one, has a bad habit of changing the station. Mom, he says in his deadpan and stares out the cracked windshield. I already knew that about you growing up on Stevie Nicks. He's 16 and gangly with poking collarbones like little car door handles. He wants to be a professional basketball player, but will settle for rock musician. His face has grown long and gaunt, so he doesn't look like himself, but the person he's in the process of becoming. I tell myself it's a beautiful face. It's important to tell myself that many things about teenage boys are beautiful, so I don't panic. The song's about a woman who climbs a mountain at the end of a love affair and sees her reflection in the snow-covered hills and becomes less afraid. It's in a challenging register for me, so I'm almost crowing while I sing. But for many months, I've wanted to be less afraid. And I feel for a moment like Stevie Nicks is a close friend, like she knows me. Every time I turn on the radio, Sam says in his most sarcastic voice, it's Stevie the Good Witch of the West Nicks. The thing is, Mom, I don't want to grow up in Maine on Fleetwood Mac like you do. Like you did. His hair is the color of straw and hangs below his ears, and I can't tell if the hair is a joke or a bad fashion statement that involves rarely washing it. But I grin at him and move my head to the beat because at least he's speaking. Sometimes my son's silence in the car is flammable. Charlie's in the back seat. He's our moral police, 17 going on something like 33. He thinks sports are a hoax and believes in the laws of physics and a senior named Lucy, who recently moved to Maine from Burundi. He's taller and sturdier than Sam and has my husband's dark wavy hair that doesn't move even in high winds. I'm trying not to think about my husband. He's renowned on the peninsula for his gargantuan energy and for being a fisherman who doesn't come home empty-handed. 10 days ago, his boat engine exploded off Georges Bank and he broke his right femur and got airlifted to a hospital in Nova Scotia. I'm not allowed to talk to the boys about how much I miss him. I'm not allowed to talk to the boys about my dread or my worry or any of my emotions, really. This isn't because the boys aren't emotional. It's just that no outward expression of emotion is sanctioned in this phase of wolf development. The tourists have all left, so there are no other cars on the road, just a fading sun that knives through the pine trees and puts its little spell on me. I keep asking myself who I want to be for Kit and Sam and Charlie. It's a coping strategy I read about in the hospital last week. Who do you want to be for the people who need you? I'll stop there.
Thank you. I love that. It's really struck me how that is just like a perfect little roadmap for where we're going in this novel. You know, you really lay it all out there. Especially, this is the first time I've really heard the fear and the panic. There's a lot of fear and panic, obviously, for her at this moment. But it's interesting. I think a lot of parents feel this about having teenagers. You know, you have your babies and everyone's like, especially if you, I mean, I don't know if this is true, but I felt there's all this stuff because I have girls. They were like, oh, wait till they're teenagers, you know, oh, they're going to be trouble. Like that's all you ever heard was what trouble the teenage girl was going to be. And I think they do the same thing for boys in different ways. And so, you know, you're just, I don't know, you wait in panic, I feel like, until the teenage years, and then you're in them and you get bounced around and slapped around, and then you come out. And so I'm wondering, like, what is my question here? What causes the panic for Jill? Why does she say she doesn't want to panic, and what is she scared of?
Don't we have a saying, Lily, about when they're slapping us around? We some days they've just slapped us around and we're like, oh, it was a bad day. It was a bad day with the teenagers. Oh God. So we whack-a-mole. We play whack-a-mole a lot.
That's us slapping.
we call each other and we're like, it's bad whack-a-mole. It's bad whack-a-mole today. We've got that one down, but this one's
yeah, exactly. You solve one problem and boom, the next day. It's just hilarious.
I think Jill is playing a lot of whack-a-mole. I had never thought of that. Because Charlie has left on his love affair. He hasn't left for real, but emotionally he's really in love. And so he's like gone. He's leaving them. It's like he's on a ship. And Sam, she knows the reason why she's having a little panic. Well, first of all, she knows how terribly injured her husband really is. And the boys are not fully dialed into it.
Yeah.
She's on her way in that scene to a little skiff, a little beat up skiff that they keep. And it's just a 4-minute little drive across this little channel of water. But they really shouldn't be out there now. It's late October. They should be on the mainland. But the boys don't want to leave because it's like bad luck because dad's in the hospital. Dad has to come home to the real house. And I think she knows Sam, there's this time for those of us who've gone through the teenage time. My children were not particularly flammable, but there's unexpected like treachery coming. Like you don't know. Like every day it's whack-a-mole, and she knows that. She knows Sam's going to give her a run for her money.
Yeah,
and he does.
Yeah, he does. Let's just go to Maine. The concept of Maine, which is really like a character in this novel. And Maine, I mean, it's almost like a state of mind, right? For everybody. I mean, Jill's Maine is very different than Kit's Maine, which is different than the boys' Maine. And so I'm wondering if you could just talk about those different Maines and how they're working in this novel.
I love that. I hadn't thought of that, and it's so true. So a lot of the novel is exploring how like devoted and filial we are to our places. And
yeah.
I am fourth generation Maine. I know a lot of Mainers who are deeply filial and committed to this idea of Maine, and it's the Maine they grew up in. And I would count myself as one of them. But I left the state for a good while. I came back. This is like my nostalgia trip novel where I got to really celebrate the Maine I grew up in and be nostalgic about it. That's
even though it is, let's just clarify, it is set in contemporary.
very much.
Look
Yeah. I think that my Maine is actually probably Kit's Maine. I hadn't thought of that. You know, he's fourth generation. He has hardly left the coastal town that he's in. He has fallen in love with Jill at the Dirty Dancing summer resort. They had a wildly good, exciting love affair. And she tried to kind of leave him, but he pulled her back. And she's from Maine, but she's not from coastal Maine, and that makes a big difference in Maine. So Kit's Maine is not her Maine. She's not a water person. Like, she doesn't know the ocean. At one point, I think she says, "I'm not from fishing." He's fishing. And then the boys, I would say both of the boys are like waiting to get into, they need to move on from the village life very soon. There's a lot of like, we need to get going here. Let's go. And I think I was borrowing from a lot of Maine teenagers that I know that have this sense of geographic isolation in Maine. And then that ebbs, right? But they do have it. A lot of teens have it wherever they are.
Yeah. And there's also, I mean, really, they can't, it's clear, because part of the novel is really Kit mourning the end or the decline, the massive, incredible decline of the fishing industry, and that he lands in the hospital, and that is consuming him. He's not even worried about his physical condition and that he almost died and that he might still die. He's just like, I can't believe it's the end of fishing in Maine. And so the boys, you know, he's not going to be able to pass that on to them. Like, they know, they don't really talk about it, but they know that after all of those generations of fishing in his family, it's over. And I wonder, was that something you were always aware of? Did you do a lot of research? You know, and how did you work the research into the book? Because it's very, you know, you feel it, but you don't give us, you know, 3 pages on the fishing industry in Maine. Thank God.
Thank God. Yes, I could have done a whole book on sort of permitting, quotas.
Yeah.
That's actually my challenge. I did a lot of research. I talked to a lot of fishermen. I grew up with a lot of fishermen. I grew up in this mid-coast Maine. So I knew this world, but I have to say, I thought the problem was more clear cut. I thought we had a shortage of fish, and thus the industry had collapsed, but it was more complicated than that. And it is. Because what happened is we lost a lot of infrastructure here that would support fishing, and we're clawing our way back. We're trying to hold on to what we have. I didn't realize until you said this, Lily, that I think when Kit's almost dying in the hospital, it's a proxy for fishing. I hadn't thought of that, you know, that I put all the fishing on him. Yeah. And
it's really true. He's like a mess.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. And Sam really wants to fish. So what happens when someone like Sam doesn't even want to go to high school? He just wants to fish, and then he wants to get to the Burlington, in the van to do radical things. He wants to do radical things. Oh,
that's very funny. All right, I think that we might have reached the time in our show where
nervous.
I'm really trying to think which direction I want to go in, but let's just do a few German questions. We're just going to have some rapid fire German questions, and then and then we can talk a little bit about process and about Kittery, and then we'll go to questions from the audience. But the reason I want to do some rapid fire German questions is that I got something like 63 questions from my German publisher, and I had to choose 17 of them. But the questions were they were you'll see. I mean, they were just so interesting, and let's just say they were very German. So we're going to go from
that's the German questions. You warned me about this. I'm very nervous. I'm just
do rapid fire because you could sit forever and ponder this question. but we'll just do it super rapid fire.
Okay.
So first one. It's going to be impossible to do this with a straight face. What?
Uh-oh.
What makes you wither away?
Snakes.
Very good. Who would you like most to see naked?
Wow. Lily, please help me.
Yes.
Pass.
Just one person. All right, you get one pass. You can pass on that. I think I said Idris Elba, but whatever.
That would have been good.
What can you bear only with humor?
My children's anger.
That's good. How do you break the spell in conversation?
I'm a close talker, apparently, so I get really close to people.
Which illusion do you cherish most?
That my children will always be devoted to me and will never stop talking to me as long as I live. I mean, like talking to me every day.
Okay. Your current state of mind?
Delighted. I am actually having fun.
Oh, good. Thank God. Which hope did you abandon?
Oh my God, the German questions.
This is the last one. So.
What hope did I abandon? Oh my God. Wow, it's so German and fascinating and philosophical. So I'm going to take it and give it a little bit to my novel, but it's me. I think I had a clearer hope as a woman who wanted to be an artist and write books that I could really, really be like truly an artist and also be a mother, like 100% all the time. And that hope I did abandon, and I created something else, something hybrid that works for me. But I had to let go of one hope, I think, to make the other stuff happen.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. And I think Jill had to do that too. And I am not Jill in Landslide. I'm really not. But I do think she's navigating that. Like many, many women and men are navigating how to be their true selves separate from their family structures, I think. So
yeah, no, I think that's really true. Okay, so let's go back to the writing of the novel and basically your process. I was remembering today our trip to Kittery. Just for you all, Susan and I sometimes go on kind of writing retreats. And one time we won a house in Kittery in an auction.
We did.
And off we went. Of course, our husbands thought that they would be going with us to Kittery. But then we turned it into a writer's retreat and we went off. And we were both I was working on Writers and Lovers, the first draft, and you were working on Landslide. And I'm wondering where you were. I just have such a vivid memory of writing the last scenes of Writers and Lovers, like super furiously, really, really, like I just got into a stride, like maybe on the second or third day. And it just came out of me very, very quickly. And it was just a magical, magical time. And I'm wondering what was happening over on your side of the house.
Across the hall. Yeah. I remember the stairwell. It was a very large house, and we had won it for very little money in an auction. And we were the only two people in this house. It was very surreal. But our bedrooms, we went up the stairs, and then you went right, I went left.
Yeah, exactly.
And we've done many of these writing retreats, I just want to say, and they're incredibly productive. We've done them all over and in weird places. And
yeah, and scary places.
It's scary places. But we always get a lot done. And we have a rule. We don't see each other during the day, and then we meet and we go on a walk and a dinner and talk about the day. I think that that was early for me in this book, yeah. This very early Landslide, but that's the most exciting stuff. is laying what I would call like the emotional tracks down, right? So I found these notebooks because Lily asked me, and I write in all these notebooks, and I'm a pretty tidy person, actually. I would like to say tidier than Lily.
So true.
But I'm a very messy writer. Like I write in scraps of paper everywhere and all kinds of different notebooks. And Lily writes much tidier than me. She's a very tidy writer. But when I was in Kittery, I got to some important stuff. And I think it was this kind of stuff. Like I was doing basic things like Jill is a woman that has a name that can change. And I needed a name that could change. Her husband calls her Jilly. Her children, when they're angry at her, call her Jillian. Her friends call her Jill. So I said, have the younger son be insolent and the mother be very calm. Maybe her name is Jillian. Her husband calls her Jilly. People who don't know her call her Jill. Her children took great pleasure in calling her Jillian. And then like, this is the kind of stuff I read in my writing notebooks. I am not sure if this is a diary, but it doesn't matter. Suddenly I had moved into stuff about my own life. And then back. The boys are growing up, and it is as if I don't acknowledge, Jillian doesn't acknowledge their age. They've grown up so much and onward. That's the kind of stuff I was doing in Kittery.
Okay. What do you do with that? Like you have that, but that's not even lines of a novel. That obviously ideas. But then you have another notebook where you're actually writing scenes and dialogue, or do you do that?
So here's the first page of this notebook. It says, "Oh, this is so funny. This is elemental. This is the beginning of the novel. This is a glorious part of Maine, known as Phippsburg. It's a fishing town halfway up the coast. Its own village." With ruling families. Every coastal island has a village like this, and the man that gets the best catch usually sort of rules the village, etc. When I've written that and I'm done with it, I put it in the computer and I write a line through it. Lily's in shock.
Wait, and what are you putting on the computer? Are you saying, like, are you now describing it? Are you like, boat came up the ocean, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, this is my first draft. My first draft. But to you, it makes
not a draft.
See? Like Lily writes.
That is a note. This is a draft. This is my first page. It says, Adam watched me walk his dog. He leaned against his sob in a black suit and shining shoes. Like, it is the novel. Where is your novel?
That is plot. This is mood. Therein lies the difference. Okay?
And so then when you put it on the computer, you're suddenly having characters and lines and dialogue? Or are you still kind of...
I'm all over the place. So check this out. Here's something I wrote that makes only helps me. Let it be very sexy.
And there, let me tell you.
Marriage. Very sexy and real.
Sexy
and
marriage.
Funny. And also have them be mournful. And then this is the big tension of the whole novel in a way. I won't give it away.
Oh, come on.
Jill isn't sure if he slept with the girl.
Right. I know.
That's all I wrote. And once I got there pretty early. That's pretty early.
That is early.
This is all grounding wires. And I don't want to scare people I know I have some various grad students and such in the audience. It gets much more plotty, but always weaving in. And anyway, it goes right to the computer. Yeah.
So all of your composing is on the computer. All of your, composing of scene and dialogue and stuff. Like you're looking at your notes and then you're making a first draft of the novel on the computer. Is that right?
Well, kind of, but I mean, there's a lot of scenes in here.
Okay.
There are. We should move back, Jill said. We should leave. But it's so cold now. And so on. And then Sam says, we can't leave. We can never leave until Dad comes back. That kind of thing.
Interesting. So you put ideas, kind of conceptual things right alongside little dialogues and moments and stuff.
Yeah, and let's talk about that, because what you do, so Lily keeps a journal that's separate, but in that journal, do you talk about your novel?
Like I keep a journal.
Right.
I sometimes write about my novel, but all the notes, like I write in this, lined notebook, and so all the notes go in the last 20 pages. I set aside like this little, part at the back of the notebook that I make a little thing right here. And so I
organized.
I know. Isn't it so funny that mine is the sink that is full of dishes all the time, and yet I have this organizational system? And so all the notes go here, like this and this and this, and that's where all of my notes go. They go in the back separate, and then as I make this timeline. I know
that always scares me. That always scares me.
And so then I know, like, I don't do all of it, but at least I have a roadmap of some kind, something like that. And then the other kind of anal thing that I do is I have my writing log. And so I write, how much I write, what day, and how much I write it.
That is a fascinating look into your brain. The writing log has always fascinated me. It works so well for you. I love that.
We all have our bizarre little systems.
We do. And there's no wrong way to do it. There's so many ways to do it. And it's all just about feeding your creative mind, like feeding your writer's mind, right? So many ways to do it.
Yeah. And you just have to really be, I guess, just open to whatever comes whenever it comes, like I just feel like all these ideas, they come sometimes while I'm writing, but they often come when I wake up in the morning or when I'm driving. Driving is a big thing, or when I'm in the shower. And so it's really important, especially as I get older. Like I don't retain them as long as I used to. Like I could hold an idea. I used to be able to hold an idea for a really long time and be like, oh, well, I'll never forget that. And it was true. I never would forget it. And now I will forget it if I don't write it down. So
no, it's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. Yesterday, I have this idea of a novel, my next novel, which would be leaving Boyland and moving very much back into women and young women. And it would take place a lot in this swampy house that I lived in one summer, off the coast of Massachusetts, actually. And I had my first note yesterday for it, but it was on a scrap of paper in the kitchen because I was making coffee. And and then for the next 2 days, I just carried it. It's just one piece of paper, and I made sure I didn't lose it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now wait, did you kind of know like this was coming, and then like a very specific idea came? Did you already kind of have a vague idea of that novel?
I did. And I know that you had a vague idea for your next novel, and you're in it now, aren't you? Would you say?
I'm in and around it. Yeah. I mean, I'm always thinking about it. I'm always taking notes about it. And I've only written maybe like 10 pages total. And that was, this summer, and last spring. And since then I've just been, doing some research, but also, I'm finishing a collection of short stories that'll come out in 6 months. And so I've had to kind of do that and not as much of the novel, but I feel it like just that really, really, really great feeling. feel like I have to knock on wood of when everything in your world, it goes like right through, I don't know, the novel space in your, everything gets translated into the novel. It just comes in and it goes right in there and it just lands in there. And it's so, it's that moment where you feel like this novel could do anything. You're locked. You're not, nothing has been roped off or, decided or anything. It's like just has so much potential. And I love that feeling so much.
It's so exciting.
Yeah.
That is the very best feeling. I'm remembering this, you and I have a saying like we're sometimes, and I think Virginia Woolf, someone read me an epigraph recently that was like, Virginia Woolf, something about if we could just come up with a new plot. And the idea that you and I have said many times to each other near the end of novels where we feel that we have written ourselves into these plots.
Yes.
And we so wish we'd taken other roads and didn't have the plot we had. But really, we're all stuck with our plot at some point, and we just have to make our peace with it. The stage you're in is the best stage.
It's so nice and juicy, isn't it?
Yes.
That hard stage for me is like 2/3 of the way through, where you've had to shut all these doors, and you've shut so many that you're not sure there's an exit. You're not sure you can get to the end. And I hate that feeling. It's super claustrophobic and terrifying. And so when I'm always like calling you up and saying, I'm going to quit now. Oh, it's 7:47. Well, there she is. That was right on time.
Well, I don't want to intrude because this is absolutely delightful. And so hopefully I won't throw the balance off. But we do have some questions. So I do want to get to them before we run out of time. And one of the top questions we have after that delightful conversation is, how do you two know each other? I want more on history.
We just met on Zoom like a half an hour.
You did. Yes.
It's a funny story in that we met at least 25 years ago in Boston. Lily was in Cambridge. I was in the South End of Boston, but we had a mutual friend who's still a beloved friend. And we started a book club. It's a very writerly friendship origin story. But our friend, we always joke, she told us each that we were starting the book club with her. So when we went to the book club, Lily and I were like, oh, hi, like she and I are starting the club. Welcome to the club. But in fact, we had both been told we were starting the book club. So it's a wonderful joke that we have. I was actually an editor at Plowshares at Emerson College. I was teaching there. And Lily was able to come teach at Emerson. I remember, Lil.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were finishing the Pleasing Hour. We didn't have children, and we just had some great Boston years.
We did.
Yeah.
And then I guess in 2002 I moved to Maine, and Suze was right behind me. I mean, she was always planning to move to Maine, and I was always planning to move to Maine. I remember we had lunch one time and we realized we were both planning to move to Maine. And so then we made a Maine pact and we did it.
That's amazing. Good job getting over the egos of not being the actual founder of the book club. That was very, very, very big of both of you. I love that.
I'm not sure that I knew for like 2 years.
Oh my gosh. Okay, a question. Actually, this is a little bit of a cheating question because it comes from our event coordinator, Roseanne, in the back. But I also have a big interest in this question, so we're going to go with it. So I know she's very intrigued by the characters of Lara and Muriel in both of your books, and saw a lot of parallels between them. Can you talk a little bit about the respective relationships and just what role they each play in each of your books, please?
Lily, you start. That's a great question. I love
it. It is really true. I mean, I love Lara, first of all, in your book. I mean, she is just, I'm always so suspicious in novels where you have this long novel about a woman and she seems to have no female friends. And I understand, novels, you can't include everything. But I feel like, my female friendships are just so incredibly important to me. And so my writing friendships are really important to me too. And so I needed to put that in there because that was my experience as a young writer, having, friends who were writers who I could really lean on, who didn't, Susan and I always say, like, when you have a friend who's a writer, they you don't feel crazy, crazy for trying to do what you're doing. And so I wanted to portray that, and how essential it was, and how much another writer can really hold you up when you're feeling not very strong.
God, you've what you've said, it's so good. I think I wanted to have a true elemental woman friendship, and Lara and Jill speak they speak a shorthand, and Lara is in ways doing things that Jill can't do, and because Jill has had the children and Lara hasn't, and Lara is kind of like, she's kind of like a she keeps Jill in check. I mean, my favorite line when Lara says, like, I'm going to evacuate you from that island if I catch you wearing mom jeans. like you are not allowed to get like slack on your fashion. So Lara was very fun for me to write. She conjured up a lot of my most cherished friendships, from my life, really.
I love that. We have a question. Susan, can you talk about how you thought about keeping the tension and pacing going in the novel? And oh boy, yes, there's a lot of tension. That's a great question. How did you sustain it?
Yeah, thank you. So I was very keen on pace. I call it the internet age, but I will cop to wanting a little bit of a faster pace. I don't mind a short chapter. Obviously, I seem to like them a lot. It's present tense. It's first person. It's pretty immediate. And I like a fairly compressed line of, sentence. And I think that also can enhance pace. And we don't know some things. We really don't know some big questions. About 3/4 of the way through this book, we have some real questions that need to be solved. And then I will say, by the end, I was surprised. I got surprised by some things that are admitted by the end. And that was kind of thrilling for me.
Excellent. Thank you. We have a question for both of you. Character or plot driven on your books?
Lil?
Very character driven. I just, for me, character is plot.
Mm-hmm.
Not to turn anyone away, but they do, I like it when things happen. But my passion, my real interest, my, I don't know, my connection to my books are always through the characters, always.
Yes. And I absolutely, for me too. And then I'll say, for me, it's so that the conduit for that is voice. I've been obsessed with the word voicey lately. I've been using it a lot with my students. Like, we need this to be voicier. Make this voicey. Because really that's the mechanism, right? To get to the emotional level. And then all kinds of plot happens. But for me, it's all about the cadence and the kind of vernacular of the voice. And then I feel like I get my character. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another question about voice, actually, and this is for you, Susan. This is from Virginia. She says, I love that this novel is told in the strong first-person voice of a mother, and yet it's so much about boys and men. Jillian spends a lot of time trying to decipher them while staying true to herself. Can you say more about how the boys and her husband help us to know her?
Yeah, so first person, thank you for that question, it has blind spots, huge blind spots, which are kind of delicious for a novel, because then you see your narrator's weaknesses, and the things that they can't see about themselves get reflected in the ways that the other characters talk to them, right? And I had Jill often, I would say, on her heels. I liked her on her heels. Like, there's so many different things coming at her. And sometimes the boys are just delightfully humorous. Like, it's just all banter. She's still a tiny bit on her heels. And I think first person works well for that because then she's caught off guard. And I tried third person. I forgot that. I tried third person. But I lost the immediacy. In fact, I wrote the whole thing in third person. I forgot. And I thought I had it. And then I just couldn't get close enough to Jill. Mm-hmm. So I had to move into first. Yeah. And Lily, you do this too, right? You move back and forth a lot.
I do. I mean, I write the whole book one way. And then, I think I tinker at first, when I get the first page and then I'm like, is that really? And then I play with the tense, I play with the person, and then I write the whole thing. And then I go through a whole new round of questioning. And then I'll try out like another 10 or 20 pages, and then I'll scrap it all and go back, or, yeah, I'm never 100% sure.
Thank you. All right, 2 process questions to close us out. The first one is about your writing retreats. This is from Lindsay. She wonders, do you think they're so productive because you know the other person is there? That's interesting, like an accountability type of thing, even though you're separate all day. And how would it be different if you were solo? And maybe you have done some solo retreats, and how do they differ?
Okay, so that's so interesting, Lil. I know we've done we certainly, I've gone away to like a hotel by myself, and they're much lonelier. Because you can only be crazy for too long. Because it's so funny. In my prior novel, Elsie Come Home, Elsie's a painter, and she has to be a little crazy to paint. And it was a stand-in for being a writer. Mm-hmm. So I'm very familiar with this ground of how you have to let the reins go. You have to be untethered to really live inside a novel for 6-8 hours. And then to come out and get to go on a walk and talk about it. I think it's super grounding. And I also think the minute I airlift out of my waking life here, the creativity it's just so exciting, right? I think this happens to all of us. Whatever, when we step out, our minds open up, and it's so exciting. I can't recommend it enough. Even if you just go to your attic for 8 hours, but you say, I will not use the internet, and I'm not accountable for anyone's food or anyone's needs. Mm-hmm. and you could be like on your own self-imposed writing retreat for the day. It's about jolting your creative system, I think. Does that make sense?
And we've also done a thing where one of us can't go away or is not in a headspace to need to go away. And, one of us has gone to, a hotel down the road, and then but still, I remember you came and met me for a walk when I was at the Hilton and when I was in and vice versa, I don't know. There's something about knowing that you're actually going to see a human when you surface that's really reassuring. You feel like you're not going to drown. Yeah. I don't know. I think I need that balance.
And a beloved friend who's also like a on the same journey you're on, not a spouse or a lover that's really important. Not someone who won't understand.
Yeah.
Creative partner. And so to piggyback on that, and this will be the final question, in the course of your everyday life, I mean, now that we've seen Lily's notebook, we know she keeps a very precise military log, which I'm impressed with. I wish I actually could see the exact times, because now I'm like, whoa, when did she write? How much did she write? But we have a question about, in the course of your everyday life, do you schedule time, or do you just find pockets?
Oh,
thank you. That feels really behind the curtain. I'm really excited about that, Lance. Thank you.
Paige, did you mean writing? Like when you make time to write?
Yes, writing. So if obviously you can't be on retreat all the time,
right?
That'd be nice.
I think we're both going to say something very similar, which is like super disciplined about that and super, super structured. And for me, it would be ideally I would wake and I would write. I would not really do anything else. I would stay a little in dream state, and I could go a long time. So it's morning, and I'm very intentional about it. So I know all the days that I'm going to do it. I can see them coming. I'm obviously not doing that right now. It feels very odd. It's a gearing up for that too. It's a muscle. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't live like that all the time. I mean, I really need long breaks between novels. And I always use the excuse that I'm on book tour and, and that's getting in my way. But I actually really think that I need that replenishing. Like, it's exhausting. It's like, running a marathon, and you just can't do that all the time. But like Suze, when I'm in it, I am doing it. I mean, I basically just keep banker's hours. I mean, I show up at my desk at 9 after breakfast and, try to stay at my desk until 2 or 3, ideally. So I kind of got those hours because it's, when my kids were in school.
Cool. So perfect. Susan, Lily, goodness, what a pleasure. Thank you so much. Everyone who's watching, these books, they're on our website now. We deliver anywhere you are. We will get them to you. They are truly, I don't say this at every event, these books, everyone on our staff who's read them is recommending them, and they're really beloved by us, and we hope beloved by all of you. Please support these writers and their work. And thank you again to the Darien Library. We're so grateful for your partnership. This has been a blessing of an evening. I hope you all have a beautiful night. Thank you. And we'll see you all soon. Thanks, Lily. Thanks, Susan.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is so fun. Thank you for coming. Bye, Suze.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.